designated parking. The subject parcel, Building Pad K, envisioned a 7,500 square foot restaurant at the time. The property owner has indicated that due to the current shift in market dynamics related to restaurants and retail spaces, and with so many vacancies in the Orchard Shopping Center, and not being able to get the vacancies filled, the property owner supports the development of the preschool. And the proposed child care facility use is permitted, subject to approval of a conditional use permit, so it will require Planning Commission review and approval. Now moving on to the proposed project. The 12,838 square foot preschool will be located on the vacant 45,000 square foot parcel that's identified as Building Pad K, and access to this site is gained from the existing driveways that lead to the shopping center, and the access off Shadelands Drive being the closest to this building site. The project also includes new landscaping, 3 outdoor play areas, a new emergency vehicle access route from Oak Grove Road, and that's also proposed, which we will go over more later in this presentation. The proposed use requires 50 parking stalls, bringing the required parking on site to 707 parking stalls. There are a total of 723 stalls on site, leaving a surplus of 16 stalls. Therefore, the parking on site is adequate for the proposed use. Now let's go into the business operations. The preschool is a licensed child care facility and will operate as a typical daycare. Primrose only refers to its facilities as schools due to their education-based care. The hours of operation will be Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. and closed on the weekends. A total of 13 stalls will be used to drop off and pick up operations, which are circled in red here. And the stalls will be marked as 10-minute short-term parking during peak activity hours of drop-off and pickup. Primrose will require the parents park their cars in the marked spaces and walk their children into the building. The anticipated drop-off and pickup time is approximately 10 minutes. The parking stalls will continue to be open for other users of the shopping center outside of the peak hours of the preschool. No traffic congestion is anticipated during the morning since the preschool is located in a shopping center where most businesses don't open until the morning drop-off is complete, with, of course, the exception of Starbucks, Crunch Fitness, and Safeway, which is located on the opposite end of the shopping center. Pickup timeframes will occur when all other businesses in the shopping center are operating. So in order to avoid any backup or congestion, the applicant will incorporate a staggered pickup schedule to ensure the pickup is evenly dispersed and spaced out over the 3-hour pickup time frame. The pickup and drop-off information is supported by W-Trans Engineering and the city's traffic engineer. However, more extensive queue analysis will be required for Planning Commission review and consideration of the use permit. The outdoor playtime will also be on a staggered schedule and will be supervised by 2 staff members. And no more than 1 age group will be taken out at any given time, and the playtime will end at approximately 5 p.m. daily. And here is a layout of the interior space of the preschool, which can accommodate up to 218 children at full occupancy between the ages of 6 weeks to 4-year-olds. And the interior space shows a entry vestibule that leads to the reception desk and offices, kitchen, storage areas, and a corridor that leads to the 13 classrooms. Each classroom includes the entry door from the interior corridor and egress doors that will lead to the outside of the building. The exit doors are required for each classroom per the regulations of the California Building Code. And now moving on to the building design. Here is the primary front elevation of the preschool that will face the existing parking lot of the shopping center and consists of a combination of stucco, wood siding, stone veneer, corrugated metal siding, and metal roofing. The front of the building is raised to provide a higher front elevation and incorporates a cupola and a grain tower silo, providing the architectural elements to the roof. The changes in roof line and variation in building height provides nice articulation to the building. However, all of the doors, including the primary entry doors, do receive the same treatment. And in order to accentuate the front entry, the applicant may consider incorporating larger windows along the front elevation and consider recessing or changing the entry doors to create more of a prominent entry feature, which is also required per the design guidelines for this shopping center. And here is the back elevation of the building, which faces Oak Grove Road. The materials are carried to the back of the building, and the building jogs back, providing the necessary changes in building form and articulation. The portion of the building that is recessed back will include a metal awning, and that will extend over the windows and the doors. And the side elevation will be this, the west elevation, which is the side elevation, is visible from Shadelands Drive as it faces the open space, the park area of the shopping center. As proposed, the elevation appears a bit boxy and lacks architectural character. The window to the far northwest corner of the building does appear a bit out of place, and staff does suggest framing the windows to be a little more inset or incorporate more windows and awnings over the proposed window and doors to provide more detail and articulation. And here is the east elevation that will be facing the existing tenant along, which is Mike Hess Brewery. And this elevation incorporates a mix of stucco, stone veneer, metal roofing, and lap siding. There is a window in the middle of this elevation that does appear a bit out of place, and the applicant should incorporate more windows to consider another material to break up the blank facade of this building elevation. And the design of the building is also required to comply with the design standards of the specific plan. Overall, staff is supportive of the building layout and the variation in materials as it matches the theme of the shopping center, which includes the use of metal siding, metal seam roofs, wood siding, and stone-based elements. But staff believes the front, which is the south facade, lacks a prominent front entry, and more window treatment along the front elevation is required to comply with the design guidelines. And there are also excessive doors on the exterior of the building that take away from the architecture. Staff does recognize the building code requirement for egress doors. However, additional visual interest can be provided at the main entrance and the side elevations. And more windows or awnings can be included to break up the blank facades. No details have been provided on the exterior lighting except for the location of the wall-mounted lights on the building elevations to really determine compliance with the guidelines. The design guidelines also requires that all proposed equipment mounted to the roof be screened by parapet walls, but no details related to the placement of utilities, air conditioning units, or rooftop equipment is shown on the plans to determine compliance. Additionally, no trash enclosure is shown on the plans, and I believe a trash enclosure is required per the city's engineering department. Staff requests that the DRC provide feedback to the applicant on the design concept and also compliance with the design guidelines, which are included as attachment 5 of the agenda packet. And here is the proposed landscaping plan and associated improvements for this project. The 3 outdoor play areas consist of artificial turf and will be fenced separately with a 6-foot-tall metal railing fence along the perimeter of these areas. The project also includes a new emergency vehicle access that's located along the northwest elevation of this parcel, which leads to the back of the proposed building from Oak Grove Road. The EVA will be designed so it doesn't interfere with the existing multi-trail or the bike crossings within the easement area behind this building. And the EVA will be constructed to match the EVA that's already installed in the easement areas between Via Monte Senior Center and Safeway. And I have included a photo here. And a arborist report will also be required to assure that the proposed EVA does not impact the existing highly protected trees on site, but I believe the EVA will be installed approximately 50 feet north of the highly protected heritage oak, and the Applicant is proposing new landscaping that will blend in with its surroundings. The existing plantings around the bike trails will remain, and a total of 6 24-inch box trees consisting of crepe myrtles and western redwood trees will be planted along the back and sides of the building. And 5-gallon shrubs, grasses, and a variety of ground cover is also proposed. And some of the sycamore trees along the front of the building will be removed or relocated. Staff doesn't have enough information on the size of these trees. However, removing any tree over 9 inches in diameter will require a tree removal permit. Staff recommends that the applicant also plant more trees at the rear and sides of the building to serve as a background for the play areas and visual screening, just providing additional visual screening for the adjacent property to the east. And staff would like DRC's input on the proposed landscaping and also on the EVA design. And just to summarize, staff supports the proposed Primrose Preschool at the Orchard Shopping Center. However, more attention can be given to the design of the building. Staff is requesting input from the Design Review Commission on the proposed architecture, the landscaping, proposed EVA design, the lack of windows, and also I guess like there are too many doors on all elevations that could either be recessed or there could be some sort of architectural element provided. And we also need more details and information on the landscaping. And with that, staff recommends that the DRC provide input on the proposed design and also a positive recommendation to the Planning Commission to consider the use permit. And with that, I conclude my presentation, but I will be here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So any questions of staff? Commissioner Gorney.
Good staff report. There's like 7 or 8 things in there that you're talking about with the architecture, each of which will make a major change to the building. So am I assuming what we're looking at here is just kind of a general, comment on the architecture, a general comment on the use, send it to Planning Commission, but if we don't agree that the architecture is worked out, because I agree with all of your comments, that, do you think we have it, bring it back to us first for the architecture to be approved, or do you think sending it to Planning Commission with an understanding that they're just looking at the use and we're going to get the architecture back as something else?
Correct.
But if they do major changes to the plan based on the architecture and the site planning, does it have to go back to Planning Commission again?
As long as the site layout, I believe if the site layout doesn't change and we're just focusing on the changes to the architecture, then no, it wouldn't need to go back to Planning
Okay,
Commission.
so there's a line by which, so really, they're just going to look at the use and whether it's
Yeah, and of
appropriate.
course the site layout, they are going to look at the site layout, and the circulation is already existing, right, for the parking, so that's
Yes.
not going to be an issue.
Okay, and then I'm assuming, because we're not the Planning Commission, that the whole commenting on the parking and the drop-off and all that stuff in there, which, staff says that, staff finds the parking adequate. I find the parking not adequate. And that whole idea that you're going to use 6 parking spaces to drop off 218 students seems absurd to me. So that's something also that we're not going to comment on, right? And that's really going to go to Planning Commission?
Yes,
But we
that
can
is something
give them our
that-
opinion on that?
You can definitely give your opinion, but that is
Okay.
something that is being worked on. So again, what we brought forward to you is just enough information that we can present and move the project forward. But
Okay.
the applicant is aware that the traffic study will need to incorporate more queuing analysis.
Okay.
And just to your comment about making sure that there wouldn't be an impact.
Mhm. And also the adjacency, being that there's a brewery next door and music and loud noise, and 20 feet away, there's a children's sleeping area. That's also something that'll be dealt with by Planning Commission?
Correct, but you
comment on
can
it.
definitely comment on it.
Okay, good. And then I had another one, but I can't remember what. But again, you have these ideas about the architecture, and you've given this in writing to the applicant, correct?
Yes.
And did they have any comment on that? Like, we want to redesign it and get it back to you before this meeting? Or was the idea to really get at the Planning Commission to talk about the
Yeah,
use
I think
first?
they were trying to move it forward to Planning Commission, so I said the plans were developed enough to at least bring them forward. And of course, I know in the past, DRC has mentioned that you like to see the plans early on.
Yes.
That way we can make those changes, so we thought it was appropriate to bring it before you. And of course, staff has pointed out some of the concerns that we see.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thanks. So, first question is, do we have an official definition of community facilities, which is in the design guidelines for that?
Yes.
Land district.
So I believe daycares and preschools fall, in our zoning ordinance, preschools and daycares fall under the use classification of a community facility.
Got it. And then I think from your report, planning staff right now is comfortable with the parking and traffic flow. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say we're comfortable with the traffic flow. Again, we'll need more information to determine that, and we're working with the applicant to get that information. But yes, we are comfortable with the required parking on site, since it's based on the calculations, it is overparked. So additional parking wouldn't be required.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're
What's there
comfortable
on
with
site, we're comfortable with.
you're comfortable with the required number of spaces, but maybe not necessarily the strategy or the flow.
Yeah, we need more information on the approach of the staggered schedule, but we need more information and details to see how it's actually going to work.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have one question.
Yes.
I know we're not really looking at signage tonight, but is the shopping center, is there a master sign program, and would this be under that, or would they have their own?
Yes, there is a master sign program for the Orchard Shopping Center, and I think I mentioned that in my staff report. They did not provide enough information on the signage, except for the 2 locations, I believe on the Oak Grove side of the building, and one which is facing the internal, the front side, which is facing the parking lot.
Okay,
So yes, it would need to comply with the master sign
all right,
program.
thank you.
My only question is, if the sycamore trees were to come out and they're currently in the existing tree grates that matches the rest of the site plan and orchards, do those just get filled in with concrete? I mean, do we know what happens if those come out?
I believe the applicant mentioned that they're coming out and they're basically removing them and relocating them, but it's just, I don't have enough information. Maybe the project architect could explain that further.
Great. Okay. Any other questions of staff? Wonderful. So if there is a presentation from the applicant, please. Or if there is not, that's good
There
as
he
well.
All right. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Scott Grady. I'm with TRC Retail. We're the owner of the shopping center. And at first, I just wanted to thank Ms. Gill for her presentation and all the tireless effort she's put into this. And DRC members, thank you for considering our project tonight. As the owner of the center, I just wanted to start by saying how excited we are to partner with Primrose Schools, and they're very high quality, early childhood education and development and firm, and we're just happy to bring them to Walnut Creek. We believe this is a nice complement to our other uses, and this is just going to further build on the success of the Orchards Shopping Center. So I just wanted to briefly introduce the team here that's assembled. We've got John Fenimore with Primrose Schools. Aaron Becker is the architect of record with Casco Architects. We've got Robert Lyman in person there tonight with Johnson Lyman, who's our local Walnut Creek architect. He's been invaluable in assisting with the architectural design here. And then Paul Reed with Reed Associates Landscaping out of Sunnydale. So I think the Primrose team has done a nice job of hiring local folks that understand the taste and the emphasis on good architecture. And I think as we walk through this tonight, hopefully we're able to address some of the concerns that have been brought up and advance this forward. So thanks again for your time. Aaron?
All right. Good evening, all. I am Aaron Becker. I'm a project manager with Casco. As they had mentioned, we are the architecture and engineering firm working with Primrose Schools on this project. And again, we want to thank the commission for taking the time to review the proposed Primrose School designed specifically for the Walnut Creek community with us tonight. And if I could, I will go ahead and share my screen. Can you all see my screen? Thank you. So as Samar had mentioned, we are located on the north side of the Orchard Shopping Center, directly west of Mike Hess Brewing. We have a approximate 12,800 square foot daycare facility, roughly 8,000 square foot of playground area to the north and to the west. The main building entry location is at the southeast corner of the site. The playgrounds are oriented in relationship to the classrooms that they're serving. So we start with the infant playground, working our way up to the early preschool playground, and the ending with the preschool playground. The fencing used around the perimeter will be a 6-foot tall decorative Ameristar ornamental type fence. And I will move on to the floor plan. As Samar had mentioned, we have 13 classrooms ranging anywhere from 6 weeks to 4 years of age, along with secondary spaces such as offices, kitchen, conference rooms, and storage rooms. All classrooms are sized to meet the California licensing requirements. The main entry, again, is at the southeast corner. The remaining doors that you're seeing to the exterior are either egress doors from the corridor or exterior doors from each of the classrooms. And with this being a educational use group as a daycare, we are required for all classrooms with kids 30 months and under to have an exterior door to the classrooms along with the interior corridor door. The service doors for the warming kitchen and for the riser room are both accessed off the exterior outside of the fenced in area. That way, if they need to be used throughout the day, they're not causing a disruption to the remainder of the school. On the roof plan, you will notice the varying roof types that we're utilizing. Majority of it is a flat roof TPO with parapets. We have a gable roof structure at the entry and also on the north side, a shed roof at the front, and a hipped roof at the west and the north. The mechanical equipment will be rooftop units, and they will be screened by the surrounding parapets. As Samar mentioned, we do have a grain bin silo that was added to the northwest corner of the roof. Staff had asked us to add this to the design as the previously designed building incorporated it. We would prefer that if possible, and everyone's in agreement, to potentially remove it as we feel it doesn't tie into the daycare use as well as it would have for a restaurant or a brewery, which was originally intended for the site. Moving on to the elevations. Today, like Robert had mentioned, it's been a joint effort between Casco, Robert, the local consulting architect, John Fennermore with Primrose School, and Scott Grady with TRC Retail, who's the shopping center owner, to achieve the current design, which we believe will be a great addition to the Orchard Shopping Center. The proposed design follows the modern agrarian theme, using similar materials such as stone, stucco, vertical wood siding, hardy lap siding, corrugated metal panels, and standing seam metal roofs. It includes varying roof lines, articulation, and rustic farmhouse elements that blend well with the adjacent buildings. Doors and windows have been sized in a manner that are attractive yet do not create a hardship for operations of the school. As you can imagine, large amounts of glass within a classroom are not ideal due to safety concerns, distraction for kids, and it creates a hardship for Primrose locating their FF&E package, which is critical to their curriculum. And we've also included just a few sample images of some of the adjacent buildings just to get a reference for some of the buildings nearby, just to get a feel for what we were pulling up to try and stick with the same design theme. But that is all we had for the time, and I appreciate your guys' input tonight and look forward to working with you all.
Great, thank you. So do our commissioners have questions of the applicant? Yes.
I just have a quick question. I think I just missed it. There was something you were going to remove that was more appropriate for a restaurant. Would you mind repeating that?
Yeah, it was the drain bin silo that was added to it's going to be mounted on the roof. It's shown on the roof plan and also on the color renderings in the black and white elevations. The staff had asked that we try to incorporate it. The original design for the site incorporated one that was going to be mounted to the ground. With this being a daycare and having a playground area, it wouldn't have been a safe component to add. So trying to incorporate it onto the roof was an idea. But again, we just don't necessarily feel that it fits in as well with our use as what it did with a brewery or a restaurant type facility.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Commissioner Killian?
I have some. On the site plan, I want to start with the front elevation or the front sidewalk. To me, it appears that your solution to tying in those exterior doors was almost as if the building was already there, and that's what you had to work with, and you put in this wrought iron fence, as opposed to coming up with a different solution, maybe setting the building back further, a raised seat wall or something that incorporated some of the architectural elements. But again, you kept some of the framework that's already there, the sycamore trees. So I guess my question is, how did you come up with that layout, and what other options did you look at?
We had to provide some type of security and privacy from the front of the building and those egress doors and the adjacent sidewalks and the parking spaces. And we provided just it'll be a 4-foot tall ornamental Ameristar fence at that location. So it'll be down shorter, not as high as distracting away from the architecture and the buildings. Certainly we can look at alternative solutions, but we are limited on being able to push the building back and still being to work within the available area to fit the required playground square footage, the equipment associated with the playgrounds, fitting in the fire access drive to the north and saving those trees, as you had mentioned. We can certainly look at potential alternate solutions to try and work around some of your comments.
Were you proposing on removing the light standards also? There's 3 light standards in between the 3 sycamore trees you're proposing on removing.
Civil plans. John, do you recall if the civil engineer or the landscape architect was proposing to remove those along the front of the building? Or relocate them, if any?
I believe that they all fit in the islands that are out there, so that they do not require removal, but I'd have to kind of verify that.
Now, they're in the sidewalk and they're set in about 2.5 feet. So again, if you're trying to remove the trees to get ADA clearance or whatever, you know, you haven't accomplished that because you have the light poles. So again, I was just curious if you're proposing on wiping out everything along the existing sidewalk.
I mean, if they're in line with the trees, that is what we're proposing, but we'd have to take a look at that because the lighting, you know, is obviously necessary for the parking lot.
Okay. To the left of that, what is the reason that you're altering, it looks like it's a driveway, or maybe it's just access to the utility transformer driveway there? It appears you're reducing one planter and increasing the size of the one next to it to kind of shift the driveway. What's the reason for that?
I believe that was to provide access to the existing transformer. Is that correct, John? That's what I recall the civil engineer indicating.
Correct.
Okay, and is that just to line it up with the building? I mean, it appears you already have access. So I was just kind of wondering, because there's a fire hydrant, some other utilities, and why you're going to all that expense to relocate this 4 feet.
I believe some of it does have to do with our proposed building corner location and the adjacent perimeter sidewalk that's adjacent to it.
Okay. I want to move back to the rear of the building, the EVA. First of all, could you explain or have someone explain, you're filling in a bioretention area or parts of it. And how are you going to, well, the first question is, do you know what watershed that comes from, to where if you're adding new bioretention, is it from that same area that you're taking away, or are you adding it to some other watershed area?
I don't believe that Kieran Wright has fully analyzed that, but I think the intent would be to not move water from one watershed area to another, and only adjust the configuration of those bioswales to account for the driveway. There's been some preliminary questions from engineering on that I know Kieran Wright has responded to But, like I said, the full particulars are still being determined.
Okay. And then can you explain the EVA? I know Simmer showed a picture of an existing one, and that's really bright green grass area, which I don't think is appropriate for this area. What's out there is a very natural, you have some deer grass and oak. And again, I don't think a bright green mow band going through that area is appropriate. So again, did you have any thoughts on how this could be incorporated to blend in with the existing landscape?
Yeah, I mean, we would plant back, grass material that is similar to what is there currently and what will be on either side of the pervious paver. So yeah, you're right, it wouldn't be the same as that photo, but the photo's point was to just show that there are other EVAs in the development that use pervious pavers.
Okay, and I kind of question how you would do that, that the grasses out there are larger grasses, clumping grasses that are going to get 3 and 4 feet across, and you won't be able to do that if you're using the typical concrete grid pavers for a fire access road. So I'm not quite sure. Have you thought this through, how that's going to be planted up if you can't do that?
No, until you raised the question, no, we hadn't thought about it.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions for now.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Gorney.
Are the doors outside and the window heights 6'8" or 7 feet?
7 foot.
7 foot, okay. And then the plate for the trusses for the roof is normally shown at 11 feet on the drawings. Are you assuming that's like the bottom of the truss and there's a drop ceiling below that?
Correct.
And there's mechanical in between the drop ceiling and the trusses?
Correct.
Okay, so that's a mechanical space that you have, okay. So one of your parts of the building, I mean, basically you have a 10-foot room down below, and then you got a 21-foot plate. It's a 2-story building that's got a 1-story operation in it, and there's a lot of building above that. What's the reason for all that space up above?
The entry tower, the height of the entry tower was to give it the presence as the main focal point, the main building entry. But the height of the parapets and the remainder of the building was just to match the sense of scale that the remainder of the development would have.
So you're saying the stone that goes up to 10 feet around the doors, and then all that stucco up above it? I mean, I don't understand why it's so tall. Is it just an architectural, I mean, a plate is 11 feet higher than the lower plate height. That's a huge amount of space, and then a roof on top of it. So architecturally, I'm just wondering what you're aiming for with that.
It's just to give the entry tower a bit more presence than the remainder of the building.
Gotcha, okay. But you didn't look at another thing with a bigger door or something that had really a presence on the street level? It was more the building having it?
Correct.
Okay, and the same thing in the back, you have that kind of square piece it's 19 feet tall, but the truss is at 7, so you're just thinking there's parapet and equipment behind that?
Correct.
Okay, I got it. So that's that, standard at base. So there's no, okay, I was thinking maybe there was a future second story or something like that, second story. No, I don't have any other questions, thank you.
Commissioner Krelling, do you have questions of the applicant?
Nothing further
Okay.
than my first one, thanks.
So could you explain to me a little bit more the requirement, I don't know where I'm looking, the requirement of the 4-foot fence on the south elevation?
Yeah, so looking at the floor plan, if you pull up the floor plan, you'll see there's 5 classrooms facing the south, A1A, A1B, B1, EP1, and EP2. Those kids are all younger kids and have to have that exterior access door. And to provide a means of safety, rather than some of the kids being old enough and potentially able to open the doors on their own or push through the panic harbor and just be immediately onto the sidewalk, into the parking lots and drive aisles, it means a means of safety that in case that does happen, there's a fence there that they then can't get out of.
Okay, so it's for safety containment if somebody comes out of that door.
Correct.
Okay, so it doesn't necessarily have to be 4 feet, or it does?
It doesn't, Primrose operationally, we typically don't go any shorter than 4. As I mentioned, the perimeter fence around the playground is 6, just to keep people from potentially being to reach over and unfortunately grab kids. But along the front, we get that we're trying not to take away from the aesthetics of the elevation, so we do drop it down to a 4-foot fence there.
Okay. And does it have to be a fence? Like, could it be a seat wall and planting? And does it have to be a certain distance from the building? I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this.
I do get going with something that's a little bit more decorative,
Right.
matches the theme of the building. I can discuss that with our clients and see if that's something operationally they would be on board with. John, I don't know if you have any initial comments on that, if Primrose operationally, that throws a wrench in your guys' curriculum by egressing out of those doors at all?
No, we could definitely, I think the only concern I'd have with, like a knee wall or something there is just the more space it may take up in width, because, we are crunched at the front there. But we just need to contain the children in some way, shape, or form. The lower fence is the simplest, easiest way to get there. But, if we wanted to make that more decorative, a veneer to match the base of the building, something like that, we could certainly look at that, as long as it kind of corrals, the potential child who gets out, before the teacher can catch up to them.
Yeah, and I think I'm looking for it to be, an ornamental fence isn't really what I have an issue with. It's the impact it has to that whole frontage, right? Because in my perfect world, I would like the sycamore trees to not be removed, because I think they help ground the scale of the building and tie it in, to the overall site plan. And I think I'm curious as well as if those are relocated, where are they going? Will they be nearby this building, or are they going elsewhere? Or that's not determined yet?
It's not determined, and I'm not sure we'll actually be able to relocate them, because they're all in tree wells.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that, you could really get a tree spade in there to move those.
Okay. Is there an opportunity for more trees just elsewhere? I think to provide shade for the play areas, or to help scale the building into context. Like, is there opportunity for more trees? Because the Lagerstromia and the Cercis are smaller stature trees, which is part of why I like the sycamore. It seems to have a little more significance.
Yeah, ideally, we wouldn't want to plant them actually within the playground, because we're proposing that to be a synthetic turf. So we'd have to kind of create wells to put those in. It wouldn't be out of the question that we could do that. But we've got a fair share of trees in the back. We'd have to take a look at the spacing to see if there's an ability to add some. But it's really, the back of the facility is where the space exists for potential trees. So we just have to kind of look at what we're proposing now, what the mature, size of those trees would be, and could we add more trees? But if we can, we certainly will.
Okay. And then my last question, operationally, being as this is, I appreciate that it's called a school, but it serves somewhat of a daycare function as well. Do you see the same drop-off influx, or is it more sporadic throughout the day? Like, because you guys mentioned there's a peak period, and I imagine that's the beginning and end of the workday, right? But I'm trying to get a feel for the impact of that on the rest of the shopping center.
Yeah, we certainly don't have the mad rush that, an elementary school would have with a drop-off lane where, everybody arrives at the same time. Our drop-offs and pickups are spread over 2.5 to 3 hour timeframes in the morning and the afternoon. And you're exactly right. The peaks are, 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, and then 4:30 to 5:30, at night, or maybe 5 to 6. But they do spread out considerably, as opposed to an elementary school. And as Simmer mentioned, we're going to make an effort to direct our parents to stagger their pickups. The morning, we really don't foresee a problem. I think we're going to have ample stalls to use. But the PM, the other uses will be open. There'll be more going on there. But also keep in mind, we certainly intend, and it won't be an everyday event, but we certainly intend for our parents to not only stop and pick up their children, but to, frequent the other uses in the shopping center. So that, there ideally will be multi trips, on foot with those pickups. But it is definitely spread out considerably, and we're going to develop a plan for those PM pickups to ensure that it is in fact spread out. But there are, peaks, no doubt.
Okay. Thank you. So does that end our questions for the applicant? Okay, then at this time, we'll open it up for public comment. So if there's anyone in the room or on Zoom.
Seeing none.
Hi. We have one in the room.
Good evening, Commission. I was introduced. I'm Robert Lyman. I'm the local architect who was brought in to assist in the design. And the team is out of town, so I'm kind of the local liaison to help interpret and provide suggestions for getting this project approved. I just wanted to introduce myself and say that this project has come a long way. It started out being a different character when this building was initially designed, and we have made suggestions for forms and materials to help create that modern agrarian look. So we're going to continue to be involved and help them with suggestions based on the comments given in the staff report, and hope to get this project through the process as quickly as possible. So just wanted to give my introduction and let you know who I am.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Seeing none.
Seeing none from our Zoom. All right, so we'll close the public comment. So at this point, we'll bring it back to the commissioners. We are discussing whether or not to send this to Planning Commission, and I think also treating it a bit as a feedback session of what we'd like to see, because it sounds like we get to see them again after Planning Commission. Is that correct? Okay,
Yes, this
Okay.
will come back for final design review.
great. So with that, who'd like to provide their comments? I
I'll
feel
go
like
if no
Gordy
one
is
wants to start.
ready
Okay.
and raring.
I didn't have that many questions on architecture because I don't think the architecture is finished. I know that the owner of this place said there's an emphasis on good architecture, and I hate to say it, I don't think this is good architecture at all. I think it's good engineering, but it doesn't work for me as architecture. It seems kind of agrarian to me in the fact that it's kind of a hodgepodge of overscale buildings that look like were built on a farm over time. It doesn't have that designed agrarian look at all, and it really concerns me. I could never support it the way it is right now. I don't think it's a compatible use. I think this is going to be an issue. You have a lot of cars there. You got a brewery next door. There's safety issues. The way the parking is going to work. Personally, I wish this was the Bank of America, and the Bank of America was the child care center. If I was, in Czar, I would switch them because I think it makes more sense to have the parking over there. I've been there, going to Hess or to eating in the late afternoon, and it's a mess. There's no parking. It really is an issue. And so I'm going to continue to make sure Planning Commission looks at this very carefully. I do believe that the silo on the building is very much an afterthought. It just looks like it's plunked on the roof. I mean, if it was before it was kind of a fun piece. It had a sign on it and a base on it. But the way it is now, I don't think it's designed into the building. So the way it's showing now, I don't think it works. I have issues with the proportions of the parts. You have, this giant 21-foot space with a 10-foot fake stone wall and some doors in it, and this giant stucco space over the top with a little teeny sign, and it's wrong. And, you have materials that change, but the plane doesn't change. You have horizontal wood, and then you have vertical wood, and they're in the same plane. When you change materials, you got to change plane and have shadow lines, and it doesn't do that. If you're going to have that one gable sticking out, it's got to really look like a building that has pieces growing off of it, and it doesn't do that yet. I think there are parking issues. I don't think it's ever going to work with the staggered schedule. I know lots of parents that drop off their kids, and if I got to tell them they got to be there at 3:01 to park and then walk in to get their child, come back out again, I just don't see how it's going to work with 218 children. So I see it as a real problem. I think Planning Commission needs to really take a look at that. You have materials on there like cedar with a clear finish. I think in the California sun, that's going to get destroyed. I think you need to look at the materials to be more permanent, because I think the maintenance is going to be an issue. I think the entry treatment is missing. It kind of reminds me of an agrarian building, a big wall with a door in it. I think that it has to have a sense of entry designed into the building. I mean, I think the layout's okay. I mean, having the entrance on the street, a bunch of classrooms, and the kids' play area in the back makes sense, but, you know, that's a pretty basic concept. The biggest thing for me is that there's no fun in this at all. It reminds me of a self-storage building, and there's no joy in it. There's no art. There's no inspiration for the children. And, you know, it's like a child storage unit. And I just think that the building has a long way to go. And so personally, I'd like to see it here again, because I think there needs to be significant changes in the architecture. But at the same time, I think it should go to Planning Commission for them to look. I'd like to see it go to Planning Commission to have them comment on the use and the parking and the other things, so that the applicant doesn't go so far in the architecture and then have them have issues that would affect the floor plans. So I think to send it to them for comments would be okay, but I think it definitely needs to come back to us in another study session with the architecture worked out.
Great, thank you. Okay, Commissioner Carling.
Thank you, Chair Case. Okay, I'm just going to go in no specific order. I live very much near this development. I was a supporter originally. I wasn't on the commission. I was just a resident. I like the orchards. We go there a lot. So when I think about a building there with fencing around it, any kind of fencing to me, for the most part, is out of character. So I know why you need the fencing. That makes sense, to protect the kids, to keep them from running out, and as you said, sadly, to keep bad people from trying to take children. But at the same time, it's going to look out of place in my mind, knowing that I know that center very, very, very well. The parking flow is my biggest concern. I would say at the top, if we send this to planning, this should have a design review condition that says that this parking process has to be fully studied, fully vetted, because I can tell you one thing, living in Walnut Creek for 20 years, every parking issue that has been said by a parking study, and God bless the parking engineers, but every single one has never, the traffic flow or parking worked out the way the engineer said. It's always been tremendously worse, magnitudes worse. And so all of us who live and work in Walnut Creek will end up having to deal with that. I agree with my fellow commissioner that parking's already a mess there. And I think a part of the issue in the plan to deal with parking is you're going to rely on parents to self-police. It's not going to happen. I can't tell you how many times I've almost been run over by the North Gate parents trying to get their kids to and from. It's kind of scary. They're in a hurry. They want to get to work. And I also think they're going to pull in, they're going to drop their child off, they're going to go to Starbucks and get their coffee, and then they might pick up or drop off their dry cleaning. Unless you have like parking monitors out there constantly pushing those people and having the flow, I foresee a mess. And so I really, really, really don't support this unless the parking issues are very well studied, vetted, tested, and it's got to be something better than the parents will be spoken to, they'll be given a parking plan, and they'll police it themselves. That's setting yourselves up to fail. On the grain silo, so one of my greatest disappointments with this entire development is that the freestanding water tower, which was a beautiful piece for the modern agrarian architecture, it never showed up. And I was so sad about that. I really love that. So maybe instead of a grain silo on top of your building, how about your classic roof-mounted water tower? Now, I heard you guys say that it doesn't fit the use of a school or a daycare, but let me offer up maybe a different way to think about that. So modern agrarian or farm architecture, it doesn't go with a Starbucks. It doesn't go with a nail salon. It doesn't go with a deli. It doesn't go with the dry cleaners. It doesn't go with a Safeway. But the whole idea of this development was to have this really nice modern agrarian architecture, which actually I happen to like overall, the architecture of the development. So if Starbucks and a nail salon can fit under that architecture, your school can completely fit under that architecture. And you could be the ones to give us our missing beautiful water tower as a part of the architecture. And when there was no running water and there were outhouses, there might have been a water tower so that the children would have water to drink during school. The south elevation, left side, I think others have mentioned it, staff has mentioned it, way too boxy. I think a lot of the other part of the building has variation in the elevations, but then you kind of get to this box, and I think something should be done with that. And then finally, as I promised in all random order, the vast expanses of stucco. I don't think that fully lines up with all the other buildings in the development. Stucco exists on the buildings. I like stucco, but you've got some spots there where it's just like a huge expanse of stucco, and I think some other treatment, other finishes would probably tie it in a little bit nicer to the rest of the development. So those are my comments. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Killian.
All right, I concur with the two previous commissioners on the architecture, so I won't go into that. The only additional comments I have is I don't support removing the sycamores and the light standards. That's part of a larger rhythm in the shopping center, and I think you need to keep that. And I'm not in favor of the solution of just adding a fence to corral the kids along the front of the building. I think it almost needs to be another wall or something decorative and set back. And again, how that then ties into the entry is, to me right now, it's missing, both on a plan view and an elevation view. There's just no sense of arrival. So I think it has to have a lot more importance. Let people know that this is your front door, and let's celebrate it a little bit. Maybe even with some different paving patterns or something to acknowledge, this is the entry point. So my biggest concern is how you treat that whole front entry on a plan view. I heard you say you're already squished, but I think you need to push it back or do something to maintain the public sidewalk, the public amenities and trees that are there that are already contributing to the rest of the shopping center, and then you create what you want to do with your program. And minor thing later on, again, that EVA has to be thought out so that it works with the existing landscape. And I think what it means is going to be some sort of a dryscape, or maybe it's some type of a colored paved concrete that looks like natural stone or something. But again, just a green grass, I don't think is appropriate for that area. Those are my comments.
Great, thank you. So I'll close it out. I am in favor of sending this to Planning Commission, giving them a chance to weigh in on the conditional use permit. I imagine that parking will probably be tricky, but in my opinion, it's already tricky out there, and I feel like having mixed uses in some of these environments, like I actually love the idea that you could drop off your kid and then walk and get coffee and go to Safeway. Like, I like those joint uses, and so that appeals to me that there's a child care facility integrated with these other uses. So I am comfortable being uncomfortable with the parking, because I will repeatedly, you guys will hear me say, like, stop designing around cars, like, let us figure out how to function outside of cars. And if parking's really an issue, then maybe people will bike, whatever it may be. So I'm okay with it not being all about parking, and I think setting aside those stalls farther away is maybe enough. I do have an issue with how it's disrupting that front sidewalk, just like Commissioner Killian said, so I would like to see something that allows those sycamore trees to remain, and like maybe there's just something else you can do for containment. I don't know if it's, I don't know if that becomes a play yard. There's probably not room for that, but something. The play yards themselves, I don't know in particular what those play features and stuff are, but I do think that an opportunity for it to not all just be synthetic turf and these pre-manufactured play elements is definitely a trend that I am seeing in the world. And being a mother of young children, I know that we seek out facilities that have a little more opportunity for some creative play. I'm not trying to like weigh in on your curriculum, but I think it'd be fun to see a little more nature or something in those play yards if there's an opportunity for that. And that leads into my comment where it'd be nice to see more trees. I know they drop litter, but the kids play with that, and I think that's part of the whole learning process. What else did I want to point out? Oh yeah, so the silo does seem a little random, as it is with the architecture now, but I do challenge that. I don't know if it's better for a restaurant. It kind of seems like it ties into the logo that I'm seeing for Primrose. So I'm like, maybe there is a way to play up this kind of weather vane rooster thing. And it feels like there could be a whole, you guys are going to hate me, but like a whole theming thing you could do. Like, you know, there's a whole farm thing and it's, you know, we're sending our kids to the farm school. It would be really fun. Aside from that, I think that's all of my comments. Yes. Okay.
Madam Chair?
everything. Yes.
Just in relationship to the play area, just again, there's a law regarding playgrounds, so they will not be able to put trees within the use zones. So it's going to be pretty sterile. So if we do want trees, they're going to have to come up with some other solution because they won't be able to put them in the play area.
Okay. Good to know. Okay, so how do we feel about sending it to Planning Commission and knowing that we've given our comments and that we'll get to see it again?
As long as we're not tying anything into this particular plan.
Okay.
That if they approve it or review it, they're just looking at the use. That they're not going to come back and say, well, you know, we approved the site plan, and you have to use that now. I just want to make sure that that's the case. And if that's true, then I'm okay sending it forward.
Okay, so how do we capture that effectively?
Well, I think what we would do is just relay that, that recommendation.
Okay,
I think the Planning Commission should not really discuss architecture too much, but they can discuss siting and site planning. Yep.
okay.
Certainly circulation and parking.
Okay, so do we make a motion to send it on, or we just say thumbs up?
You can be informal,
Okay. Okay, then I informally.
but it would be good to reach consensus.
Okay.
Yep.
Are we all comfortable with that?
I agree.
Okay,
I'm comfortable sending it on as long as the messaging includes the site plan, thinking of the DRC, and also there's definitely a lot of thinking here tonight on will the parking work?
So send that message.
I would like to have that message sent. Now, I'm just one of four, so.
I would like that message sent.
Okay.
okay. Okay, so we're good on that one. All right, with that, we will move to item number 5, commission considerations. This part of the agenda is for items that are not required to be publicly noticed, but where a formal staff presentation, public input, all these things is helpful. Anything this evening?
Just a couple minor things. Let's see, I had a note that Commissioner Gorney was maybe going to be out in October. Is that,
Yeah, I'm not going to be here in October.
is it for the next meeting?
I may not be here for the next meeting.
Okay. And the next two meetings, the next two meetings will have housing projects with your first experience with, for DRC experience with SB 330. So the staff reports will be longer,
Okay.
and there will be a lot of discussion about those types of things. SB 330 density bonus, how they work together, a lot of math, you know, how they got to the units. If you're familiar with it, you're familiar with it. If not, it might be helpful. Please feel free to call and ask any questions. We have some handout materials or materials I can email you that are somewhat primers from local or from the law firms that they have provided to us.
Okay.
Just primer on density bonus and some of the different housing bills that are out there now.
Okay, good. That's helpful.
That's all I got.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so then item 6, commission member and staff reports or announcements. We already heard Commissioner Gorney.
Yeah, well, this whole masking in this
Yeah.
room thing is just still odd to me. It feels okay today because the meeting has been fairly short.
Yeah,
The idea of having a public here and a 4-hour meeting, it's just odd to me, and so I just want to see how the other commissioners feel about it. You know, it's like, I don't know, do I miss Zoom? Not really. I'd rather be here, but I just want to, I was kind of on the fence about it. Today wasn't as bad as I thought, but it wasn't a very long meeting. Only one item.
that is true.
I'm going to see what other people think.
Thank you for bringing that up. I think, because I did talk to the city about this earlier, I think what's interesting to note about the situation, so all city employees and volunteers must be vaccinated, right? So that would then say we're in a safe zone in here, we're all vaccinated. It is my understanding that the public can come in with no proof of vaccine and no proof of a COVID test. And I think then we sort of set up a double standard, and we're basically saying that the public can come in and not have to follow the same precautions as city employees and volunteers, but this is a public space and a public forum, and the rules should be imparted equally. And if everybody entering the chambers, at least in my opinion, is vaccinated, then we shouldn't have to wear a mask in here. It doesn't pass the red face test or the common sense test in my mind, and so that's how I feel about it.
And if we have a meeting that's got a crowd in it, because we haven't had one of those in a while, but if we do, and there's 30 people out there speaking, none of whom we know if they're vaccinated or anything, I also have a concern about that. I in my life can stay away from crowds, and I do. So I'm, concerned about it.
And thank you. And I think the other thing I forgot to add is that we're also allowing the public and we're allowing the applicants to Zoom in, but we are not allowing the commission to Zoom in. We were able to Zoom in under the original governor's executive order. SB 361 was passed that provides a similar facility to all Brown Act regulated bodies up through somewhere in 2024. The only difference is once a month, the body or the commission or the council has to make a finding. They have to elect to say that there's still a public health emergency, and we will allow the Zoom. I can tell you on the county board that I chair, we are going to avail ourselves of AB 361 to allow that flexibility. And once again, I like to see everybody treated equitably. So if the public and the applicant can Zoom in, it seems to me that the commission should be able to Zoom in. I too love being here. This is only the third time since I've been on this commission that I've been able to sit here. I like being here and interacting with everybody in person. But it's also, I agree with Commissioner Gorney, this is a short meeting. 3+ hour, 4-hour meeting, masked up is really tough. It's a big ask of people. So, thank you.
It'd be interesting to me to hear if we're, audible. You know what I mean? Because I don't enjoy projecting with it on, and I also don't know where to look, so that when I'm talking to somebody on the camera, because I'm looking at my iPad, and so it's me looking anyway. So I think in general, I'm not a fan of hybrid typically, because it can be. I thought actually tonight was fine, but in some of my past experiences, it can be confusing to me who I'm talking to and where the information is coming from. So that's my biggest hang up, but I have similar concerns. I just like clarity. That's all, you know, so it's like if we have standards that we need to meet, I think it's reasonable if those are by the others. And you know, I try to be very equitable and understanding, so if we're not comfortable doing that, which I think is fair, then we perpetuate Zoom. Because that seemed to be going okay. It's also not my favorite thing. Believe it or not, I am more comfortable being here, but I thought the Zoom was working okay too. So I don't know, I guess that lands me sort of neutral.
Are we allowed to zoom in if we choose to?
Well, I was just going to mention something that Commissioner Krilling had mentioned. As it is right now, since we did not extend the allowances of AB 361, we are, commissioners, staff are expected to be here, as well as the applicants. Tonight, being that it's the first meeting, and some of these folks were in Atlanta,
Yeah.
it was allowed. But moving forward, applicants will be expected to be in the room.
So we can't zoom in.
That's my understanding, but I'm,
Okay.
you know, let's say a commissioner is ill but still wants to participate. You know, those are the things that we're going to have to figure out.
Why is that? Why is the goal to get applicants and everyone back in?
I hope this is the correct answer, but the city council voted not to extend that, which primarily just ends it. So you just go back to
Yeah.
what we have. And there's also rules along with that. So things that were relaxed for AB 361 was, say, your privacy and your location. So if you are going to Zoom in for a meeting now, your location has to be noticed.
Oh, really?
Yes, so that's what would be different.
Why? Why?
That's
And how
that's the Brown
specific
Act.
is it? Because it's like,
It's-
I'm in Walnut
yeah.
Creek,
Yeah.
surprise, but does it have to be like my home address?
Yes,
Oh.
and so that's where we go back to the Brown Act in its
Interesting.
original
Yeah,
form.
because I mean, just conversationally, I'm coming from the applicant standpoint, it's been very nice not having, and frankly, for our contracts and our clients, to not have to pay us to drive somewhere and sit for however many hours, you know what I mean? So I didn't mind a world where that stuck around a little longer. And this is the first jurisdiction I've seen go back in person, just personally, in my experience.
Chair Case, I did get some feedback on the audibleness or clarity
Yeah,
of our
yeah.
voices, and A1.
Good.
Good.
Okay. So I don't sound as muffled as I feel.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, any other thoughts on that before we move on? Okay, so I'm sorry, number 7, adjournment. I get to actually use my gavel.
Swing it.
Ouch.
That'll be
Very well.
14.
All right. Yay.
Time of death.